I'm going to go through the if function. It's quite a powerful and useful function. I use it all the time, so I really recommend that you watch this video and practice this one. I'm going to go through a basic example first. I have months here and some corresponding sales figures. I want to know which ones are high and which ones are low. Usually in this scenario, I'm probably more likely to, if I just click in here, insert a chart. And there it's quite obvious which are the highs and which are the lows. December, August high, September, February low. I've got a whole section on charts and different formatting and how you make them look pretty, so I'm not going to go through that right now. I also do a very brief column chart in the max and min video, which is quite handy and does link into the if, so I recommend you watch that one as well. Let me just delete that. So here I just want to flag the highs and the lows rather than me having to trawl through these numbers and work out for myself. So I'm just going to start. I want to know if these sales figures are greater than 4,000 or not. I'm classing anything over 4,000 as high, anything below is low. So if I start writing my if formula, my logical test, well, the question is this greater than 4,000 or not? So my logical test is this greater than 4,000. I'm going to adjust this slightly at the end, but for now I just want to write the basic formula for you. So logical test, is this figure greater than 4,000 or not? So that's my logical test. Value if true. So if it is greater than 4,000, what do I want to do? I want to return the word high. So that cell is going to be flagged as high. I have to write text in quotation marks. So that's what's going to happen if it does meet my logical test. If it's true, if this cell is greater than 4,000, I'm returning the word high. And if I insert a comma, value if false, what am I doing if it isn't greater than 4,000? I'm going to return the word low in quotation marks. So there are my results. The highs are flagged. What I actually wanted was for these two here, or 4,000, to be included in my high. But technically, they're not greater than 4,000. So here I can just, well, obviously I could have just changed this figure to 3999, but what I really want to do is add an equals. So I want to say if this cell is greater or equal to 4,000. So this one and this one here are now going to change to high. Just need to fill this down. So these are now high. I'm just going to add a header to this. And I can just copy and paste my formatting. And then if I do Control-Shift-L, that brings my filters. And I might just want to look at the highs. These are my high months here. What may have been easier, rather than writing the if formula, is to highlight this, go to Conditional Formatting, highlight Cell Rules, greater than, and I am just going to do my 3999 here. So you can see that everything that's high is actually now in red. Anything that's greater than 3,999 is in red, and you can filter by colour. So that's just another way of doing it. It can sometimes be quite hard to decipher the text. What might have been easier, if I've only got two options, is just to flag the high, just to flag the true. So I can actually just delete the word low. So if you just have your two quotation marks, that's going to return blank or nothing. So I prefer to do that. Just drag that down. Then you're just flagging the highs, and the audience can work out for themselves that these are lows or not highs. They don't meet the criteria. A better way of writing it is to actually reference a cell rather than type in the value. I'm just going to do that here. Equals if this is greater than or equal to this, and I need to absolute reference this because when I drag my formula down, I'm always comparing these figures to this cell here in H3. So I need to press F4 to lock that. Got the $ in front of the column and the row. And now let's move on to my value if true, as before, in quotation marks, high. And return blank if it isn't greater than or equal to 4,000. I get the same results as over here. The benefit of this is that I can change this figure. Maybe I'm being a bit strict. Maybe I should say if this is over 3,500, we'll class that as high. But now I'm looking at it again because I've promised everyone a bonus for all the months we have high sales. So I'm going to change it again. Let's try this. That's better. Over here, I would have had to have changed the formula each time I wanted to change that value. Whereas here, I can just change it here and it updates automatically. I have a whole video on conditional formatting, but I just want to show you one more thing over here. If I highlight this, conditional formatting, I can go to the icons, and that's quite effective as well. And there's more here. So I'm just going to go to more rules. It automatically comes up with percent. I'm going to change it to my number and say so all my highs are in green, that's low, these are kind of in between. I'm just going to undo that. A better way of doing it, I'm going to reference this cell, so I'm going to duplicate these values. Go back to my icons. Let's just change this again. Number. And show icon only. There I have it in a separate cell, which I think looks a bit nicer. The reason why I didn't copy and paste the static values and I've got the formula to reference this cell is if I were to change one of these, this updates. Whereas if I just had the static value in here, the colour wouldn't change. Here I have nested ifs. You might hear nested formulas or functions. You can see here I've got the word if several times. Before I had the value if true, value if false, but that only gave me two options, either high or low. What if I want a few more options? Poor, fair, good, excellent. So I need to add these true conditions, and then I'll show you later this is going to be my false. When I say false, it just means everything that's left over. Anything that doesn't meet these criteria, use this. This is a fairly old way of doing it. It's quite long when you look at it. And obviously you have the option of, rather than writing the words and writing the values, you could reference these cells instead. Just remember to absolute reference with the dollar signs. So over here, probably looks just as long, but it's just slightly more efficient. It's a newer version of if. Microsoft are always improving or bringing out new formulas. So this is called ifs. It's just got an S on the end. So you can see I have my logical function and my value of true. That's my next logical function. Don't need to write the word if again. So it's slightly shorter. It's good to know both because you might inherit files from other people, so they might use this and then you wouldn't really know what to do with it if you're used to using this version. I've already written it, so I'm just going to go through it from scratch. I'm just going to delete this. It's quite long writing this, and then I'll very quickly whiz through how you can reference the cells instead. So I'm just going to go through this from scratch. I need to point out, and it might be obvious, I'm not sure, when you do your if statements, you need to do it in a certain order because Excel is going to work out in a certain order. I can't put this one first. I can't say if it's less than 5,000, put it as good and then do this one because it's already accounted for these being less than 5,000. So you do have to do it in this order. I hope that makes sense. So equals if this is less than 3,500, comma, so that's my logical test, value of true, poor, comma. Now I'm not ready to move on to my value of false yet because I still need to account for these. So now I need another if, open bracket, this is less than 4,000, comma, value of true, fair, in quotation marks, comma. One more if this is less than 5,000, comma, in quotation marks, good. My value of false is this because these are my conditions. If it's less than this, it's this. If it's less than this, it's this, and less than this, it's this. Everything else is going to be over 5,000 because I've accounted for anything under 5,000. So anything over 5 or equal to 5,000 is going to be excellent. So that's technically my value of false. I don't need to do another if. I can just write the word excellent in here. I do need a few more brackets because this bracket's just closing this one off. I've obviously got one there and one there, so it should be just 2 more. If you don't do your brackets properly, if you didn't notice that, because that's purple, but it's not actually that clear. The red ones are a bit more clear. If I add another bracket there, you can see it's red. And then that's my black one. If it's not obvious and I press enter, Excel does tell me. Sometimes, although they have suggested it correctly and they say, do you want to accept the correction? They might have changed something else, or it might not be what I wanted. So I tend to do no and then look at it myself and just make sure, and then I add my correction just in case Excel hadn't corrected it properly. There we go. And then those are my results. So 4,000 is good because I'm not using my equals for any of these. I'm just saying less than. So it's just not in the fair because that's going to be anything that's 3,999. So that's correct. 4,000 is good. And excellent, the high ones here. And I've just got the one poor there. So I would do probably a few more checks there, but that looks good to me. I'm just going to move on to this one here. And then I'll quickly go back and show you how you reference the cells over here. So this one is where you only need to write the word ifs once. Equals ifs. This is less than 3,500. Poor. That's my value if true. Comma. Now it's asking for my next logical test. So that's why I don't need to write the if. It already assumes that. If this is less than 4,000, comma, value if true. Fair. Comma, logical test. This less than 5,000, comma, good. When I complete that, it's asking me for the logical test again. You might not be able to see a way how you move on to your value of false, or for everything that doesn't meet those criteria. In other words, the excellent. You actually just have to type in a number 1, comma, and there I enter my value of false or everything that's left over in just one bracket. I just drag that down. They should be the same results as over here, and they are. That's a quicker way of writing it. You just need to remember to put that 1 when you finished all your true statements, and then whatever's left or your value of false is at the end there. So I'm just going to very quickly whiz through the self-referencing version. If this is less than this, F4 to absolute reference, value if true, this, absolute reference, comma, if this is less than this, F4 to absolute reference, comma, value if true, this, F4 to absolute reference, comma, if, open bracket, if this is less than 5,000, F4 to absolute reference, comma, then this, F4 absolute reference, comma, value if false, this, F4, close bracket, close bracket, close bracket, enter. So if you were to look at that formula that someone else had written, it does look quite complicated. And click on here and you can kind of see what it's doing. But it might take you a while to decipher that. So just take one thing at a time. You could just look at the end here because you've got your logical test, your value if true, value if false. That then might give you a clue, then you can start to work out the rest. Another version of nested formulas is and or. You can see here I've got if and over here if or. The formulas are exactly the same for both apart from the word or and. I can't really think of an example where I've used and or outside of if, apart from in conditional formatting when I use a formula and I write a formula in here, I might use and or. For the and example, I've got the sales data as before, but I've now also got promo. So there's a promotion on and we made sales on a promotion. For every month where we reach a certain threshold on both the sales and the promotion, I'm going to give a bonus. I've got my threshold up here I'm just going to write the values in my formula this time and not do the self-referencing, just so we can focus on and or. So and is a bit stricter than or. I've just written here, and needs both criteria to be met. Therefore, both the sales and the promo needs to be over their threshold. Whereas with or needs only one criteria to be met. Therefore, either sales or the promo need to be over their threshold. Therefore, you get more results returned because it's either. But if we go through this, it should make more sense. So I've got the thresholds up here. Sales has to be over 4,000. Promotion has to be over 400. So I can see straight away, if I look at one of these, that's over 4,000. This is over 400. This is over 4,000, but this isn't over 400. Therefore, that doesn't meet the criteria because I need both of these to be over these. I'm just going to go and write this from scratch. We can work it out together. Equals if. So I need to write my and straight away. And open bracket. You need to get your brackets and your commas right for this. In my and syntax, it's asking for the logical 1, logical 2. So my first thing is I need my sales, this figure here, to be greater than 4,000. Similar to what we did before. Comma, my next condition is that this also, so and, needs to be over 400. Close my bracket. So at the moment I'm in the and syntax, the and statement. Close the bracket. Now I'm back in my if. So all of that and in brackets was my logical test. Comma, value if true, bonus written in quotation marks. Comma, value if false, blank. Enter. Double click. So it's only these where both that's over 4,000, that's over 400, that's over 4,000, that's over 400, and the same. That's over 400 there, but that's not over 4,000. So they are blank. Only these are getting the bonus. And for the or example, so I'm a bit more flexible here. Only one of these has to be met and they get the bonus. So equals if or. So now I'm in my or, logical 1. So the rest of the formula is exactly the same as over here because the and or the or function makes the difference. So this is greater than 4,000. That's the first one, comma, move on to logical 2, promo, greater than 400. Close the bracket. So at the moment you can see I'm still in my or. When I close the bracket, I'm back into my if, and that was my logical test. So now I can use a comma and the same in quotation marks, bonus. Otherwise, nothing. Close bracket. So that's correct. That didn't quite make it because it's not greater than 4,000, but this is greater than 400. Neither of these are. That one is over 400. That one didn't meet the threshold for the sales, but it doesn't matter, that one did. Neither. This one did. Both. And that's why it's for that one as well. This one meets the criteria. This one meets the criteria. Neither. Both. Both. And that down there. So just practice those. I'm hoping that makes sense. I have to say, whenever I'm starting a formula, sometimes I do get a bit confused as to whether I need and or all. I don't spend too long thinking about it. I usually just write the formula with one of them and say I'll just write it down. Then if it doesn't give me the results I wanted, then it must be or. And as I say, you just need to get your brackets correct. So we've got our if open brackets and then in its own bracket is our and, where our two logical tests are, and everything there in brackets is our logical test in the if function. So you can just click along if you're not sure, just click in there. We're in if, still in if. This is the start of our logical test in if. Now we're in our and, still in our and here. Come outside the bracket, we're back in our if. That's our logical test. Then we move on to our values. If true, value if false. If error, I use this quite a lot to wrap my other formulas in. I'll always write my formula first, then I'll check it, and then I'll wrap it in if error. I don't want to start writing my formula with the if error at the beginning, because it might not then highlight where I've made a mistake in my formula, which is an actual error, rather than just kind of coming up with an error message because it can't quite find what I'm looking for. Let me show you an example, then it should make more sense. I've got a list of parts, so these are master data parts, and then I've just got a list, a smaller list of some parts that we sold today. I want to know out of this list which ones we sold today. Obviously, in a small list, you could just eyeball the data, but imagine this is a larger list, or you're going to refresh this on a daily basis. It's an ongoing report. Before I start, I should just mention the easiest way to do that would be to highlight both of these, go to conditional formatting, highlight cell rules, duplicate values. Okay, these are the ones that we've sold. Control Z to undo. So I'm going to use my match. So index and match and lookups, you're often going to come back with an error. Even though you haven't made a mistake with your formula, it's looking up something that isn't there. So it comes back with an error. Equals match this, comma, in this range here, F4, to lock this array. If you're not sure what I'm doing, you need to look at my cell referencing video, or I've got a really long video on lookups and index and match, and I go through all the cell referencing there and the whole syntax for this match formula. So I'm looking up this value in here, comma, exact match. The number that's returned for match is the row number it's found it on. It's found it there. And not row as in this number 2 here, row as in this range, it's the second one. So I just fill that down, and this is here. This is on row number 4, and this is on row number 3. These come back as errors because it couldn't find them. If I've got a report, I don't really want to send it out with these errors because it doesn't look very good. Also, someone receiving this might think that I've made a mistake. So I want to clean this up. First thing I can do is wrap it in if error. So at the top here, if error. The value is my formula, comma, value if it returns an error. So this is going to be my formula. This is going to be the value it returns. This result is an error. I want it to do the if error here, which is blank. I'm going to return nothing. I just want to get rid of those NAs. And then if I just drag this down, sometimes the blank isn't appropriate because someone might think I've just missed these and I need to go and look for them somewhere and return the row number. You might actually just want to write some text in here instead. Then when I drag that down, this isn't to do with if error, but if you didn't want the row number to come up, you could use index to actually pull in something else. So I could just in here add my index. And what am I indexing? I'm going to index this. You'll see what I'm doing once I've finished it. F4 to lock that range, and then I just need to close the bracket here. So then what's happened, rather than returning the row number, it's just returning the part number, which might look a bit cleaner. Or you could have maybe a word next to this here, sold. And you could index this instead. There you go.